All right, good afternoon. Just a programming note about tomorrow. We will be joined by our colleagues from the World Food Program who will brief us on the launch of WFP's fourth edition of its flagship biannual report, The State of School Feeding Worldwide. The report will be presented by Carmen Borbano, WFP's Director of School Meals and Social Protection, who will be joining us from Copenhagen, along with Professor Donald Bundy, the co-editorial lead on the report, who will join us from jolly good England and London. Short while ago, you heard the Secretary General deliver his remarks at the closing of the 79th session of the General Assembly. He said that the session took place during numerous challenges ranging between conflicts, divisions, inequalities, poverty, injustices, displacement, hunger, and another year of record-breaking heat. Yet this assembly, he said, worked to discuss and debate and develop common solutions to address all that. The Secretary General thanked the outgoing President of the General Assembly, Philemon Yang, as he presided over the 79th session with wisdom, skill, and vision. But as we close the GA, another one opens. The Secretary General is expected later this afternoon, again in the GA Hall, to deliver the remarks at the opening of the 80th session of the UN General Assembly. Mr. Guterres said he looks forward to collaborating with President-elect Annalena Baerbock. This, as you well know, is an important year for all of us, the 80th anniversary of the UN and the visionary charter which brought this organization to life. Earlier this morning, the Secretary General presented his report, Security We Need, Rebalancing Military Spending for a Sustainable and Peaceful Future, along with High Representative for Disarmament, Izumi Nakamitsu, and the Acting Administrator of the UN Development Program, Hualiang Xu. The Secretary General said the report lays bare a stark reality. The world is spending far more on waging war than on building peace. In 2024, global military spending surged to a record $2.7 trillion United States dollars, the equivalent of $334 for every person on Earth, he said. Mr. Guterres said that as the current trajectory is unsustainable, a better path is within reach, but we need practical steps to rebalance. He warned excessive military spending does not guarantee peace. The report proposes a shift from an approach that prioritizes diplomacy, cooperation, sustainable and development, and disarmament over military buildup. I know you've all read the report. Before presenting that report, the Secretary General was here and said he had just learned about the Israeli attacks in Qatar, a country which he said had been playing a very positive role to achieve a ceasefire and the release of all hostages. He condemned this flagrant violation of the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Qatar. All parties must work towards achieving a permanent ceasefire, not destroying it, he said. And on the ground, I think you're all following the news from Gaza, and it is clear that our warnings that the Gaza Strip could be sliding into an even deeper catastrophe are now materializing. As military operations in Gaza escalate further, the international community still can and must act decisively to prevent further suffering. Over the past 48 hours, the Israeli military has struck high-rise buildings, with more families losing their homes or tents. And as you've seen, Israeli authorities today ordered everyone in Gaza City to move south. All of this happening just over 2 weeks since famine was confirmed in the Gaza governorate. OCHA reminds us that leaving the north is simply impossible for many people. As we've told you, transportation can cost up to $1,000. The coastal road that people would take normally is barely passable, and displacement sites in the south are beyond overcrowded, as we've been describing. Most people have already been displaced countless times. They're exhausted, they're out of money, and they're hungry. Today and yesterday, our colleagues tracking displacement trends recorded 9,400 movements from northern Gaza to southern Gaza, bringing the number of recorded movements since mid-August to nearly 62,000 as of 2 p.m. local time. Overall displacement across the Gaza Strip have now reached 110,000 since mid-August, including many within the north. Throughout Gaza, people are living out in the open in makeshift shelters patched together from worn-out tarpaulins. A fresh supply of tents has only begun to trickle into Gaza after months of being blocked by the Israeli authorities. With the ongoing impediments, including Israeli requirements related to NGO registration and custom clearances, as well as delays in securing collections from the Karim Abu Salam crossing, quantities remain nowhere near sufficient to meet people's growing needs. Today, the UN Satellite Center published a preliminary analysis that identified 1,500 displaced people who live in tents along the shore as being at high risk in the event of high tide or just a storm surge. The analysis focused on small areas west of Al-Rashid Road. That's the coastal road where a very high density of tents have been observed in an area known to be flood prone. OCHA says the coastal line is already crammed with makeshift shelters, forcing newly displaced families to sleep dangerously close to the water's edge. Our humanitarian colleagues estimate that many people will remain in Gaza City even after today's orders, amid further escalation in hostilities. For this reason, humanitarian organizations will need sustained, safe access to all parts of Gaza, including the north, regardless of displacement orders or the labeling of some areas by Israeli authorities as either humanitarian or dangerous. Safety is not guaranteed anywhere across the Gaza Strip. OCHA reminds us that civilians must be protected wherever they are. Humanitarian operations continue to be hindered by intensified Israeli offensive. Over the past 2 days, colleagues providing protection services in Gaza City, including to children, have had to suspend operations because premises they were using were in close proximities to buildings that came under attack. Meanwhile, our partners are present along the main north-south displacement route, where they've been supporting separated families and unaccompanied minors, often suffering from offering psychosocial support, distributing high-energy biscuits, and raising awareness of the risks that people could face in the south. Turning to the West Bank, our OCHA colleagues remind us that the situation there remains tense following yesterday's terror attack in Jerusalem that killed 6 Israelis. Israeli forces imposed extensive movement restrictions across Jerusalem, Ramallah, and other parts of the West Bank. New checkpoints were installed, and existing ones have stepped up checks, leaving hundreds of thousands of Palestinians trapped for hours and further isolating entire communities. Specifically, the Bidu enclave, which is home to 40,000 Palestinians, was completely sealed off. And regarding Ukraine, our colleagues in the Office of Humanitarian Affairs tell us that between yesterday and today, several civilians were killed and injured in attacks across the country, which also caused widespread destruction of civilian infrastructure. This is what local authorities are telling us. In Donetsk region, a bombardment this morning in the village of Yarova killed at least 21 civilians and injured 20 more. Local police say many of the victims are older people who were collecting their pensions. Police also reported damage to some 50 residential buildings and other and civilian infrastructure. In a statement, our humanitarian coordinator in Ukraine, Matthias Schmale, condemned the attacks, stressing that attacks impacting civilians as they go about their daily lives are unconscionable. Additional casualties were reported in Dnipro, Kharkiv, Kherson, Sumy, Zaporizhzhia, and Chernihiv. Several locations remain without electricity following recent drone attacks on energy infrastructure. And this morning, our heads of political affairs and peace operations briefed the Security Council on an open debate on the future of peace operations. Mr. Lacroix told council members that peacekeeping is not a luxury, it is a lifeline for millions who count on it for a future without fear. Over 60,000 peacekeepers representing 115 member states carry out this vital work in 11 missions, making peacekeeping the largest and most visible activity in the field. As the review progresses, Mr. Lacroix says what is required is a UN that is capable and ready to respond through missions that are adaptable and tailored to the needs on the ground, guided by strong political strategies, and leveraging the tools, capacities, and expertise of the UN and our partners. Also speaking was Rosemary DiCarlo, the head of our Political Affairs and Peacebuilding Department. She highlighted the need to improve coordination between peace operations and the UN country team, also adding that it is essential for mandates to avoid one-size-fits-all approach. But she concluded that the failure or weak implementation of mandate is often related to the lack of political support for such operations. We therefore need to bring the emphasis back to the political questions at the heart of each conflict and find multilateral solutions to them. Turning to Haiti, as you know, Tom Fletcher is continuing his travels to that country. He's currently in Port-au-Prince, where he allocated $9 million from the Central Emergency Response Fund amid worsening violence and displacement in Haiti. This new funding will help us and our partners step up life-saving support to the most vulnerable, including those who have fled their homes and host communities in the Center and Artibonite departments. They're facing acute shortages of food, water, shelter, healthcare, sanitation, and protection. Since March, armed attacks have escalated in these areas, triggering mass displacements and the collapse of essential services. Across Haiti, as we mentioned yesterday, more than 1.3 million people are internally displaced, the highest number ever recorded in Haiti due to violence and insecurity. Given the vast needs, the new funding is being complemented by $4 million from the Regional Humanitarian Pooled Fund for Latin America and the Caribbean, with those resources also meant to support displaced people and host communities. The Regional Pooled Fund also allocated $500,000 for hurricane preparedness efforts. As you know, we are in the midst of hurricane season in the area. This additional funding comes at a critical time when humanitarian response continues to face drastic shortfalls. Only $105 million of the $908 million we need for Haiti is in the bank. And Mr. Fletcher today visited displacement sites, a hospital and youth center in Port-au-Prince. While he was in Port-au-Prince, Mr. Fletcher also allocated $1 million from the Central Emergency Response Fund for an urgent response to cholera outbreak in the Republic of Congo. The funds will help UN agencies and our partners support government-led efforts to curb the spread of the disease, which has reportedly led to more than 60 deaths and nearly 700 cases since the outbreak began in July. The response will prioritize health, water, sanitation, hygiene assistance to prevent further transmission. And as the rainy season school year begins, the risk of cholera spreading is expected to increase. Quick couple more notes on Afghanistan. We launched today nearly $140 million emergency response plan to assist 457,000 people through the end of the year following the recent earthquakes. The plan focuses on providing life-saving assistance, including health care, emergency shelter ahead of the winter season. Indrika Ratwate, our humanitarian coordinator in Afghanistan, presented the appeal in a video briefing to member states in Geneva, stressing that we, along with our humanitarian partners, are in a race against time to support impacted people with the bare minimum. He called for solidarity and support for a population that already has endured so much. Today is the International Day to Protect Education from Attack. The past 12 months saw a staggering 44% surge in attacks on schools, resulting in the death, abduction, and trauma of thousands and thousands of teachers and students. In his message, the Secretary General calls on all parties to the conflict to meet their obligations under international law, respect schools as a place of safety, and hold accountable those responsible for attacks. And just to give you an example on one country, and that is Ukraine, and the impact there. In Ukraine, between January and July of this year, our humanitarian partners have supported 370,000 children and teachers, mainly in frontline and host communities. They've provided psychosocial support, education kits, and repairs to 57,000 school facilities that were damaged or destroyed. There are many other examples around the world. If we have of help we can provide, if we have the ability and the resources to reach those in need. Related to that, UNHCR published its refugee education report today. The report highlights some progress in the numbers of children getting some form of education, but continuing rise in the global refugee population is outstripping our capacity to educate them, and means that nearly half of these refugees remain out of school. That's about 5.7 million refugee children who do not have access to education. 2 member states paid up today. Ready? First country, the national football team of this country, soccer, football, is called the Elephants. We thank our friends from Fox News. Excellent. Côte d'Ivoire. Second country has the smallest population of any UN member state. What? No, the Vatican. Who said Vatican? No, Vatican is an observer state. Okay. Okay, none of you have a right to ask a question. It is Tuvalu, which has that will not be in the record. We thank our friends in Côte d'Ivoire and Tuvalu. We now have 126, and I do want to say a big thank you to Serife. Your last briefing, your colleague from Anadolu has been a wonderful presence here, patient with me, and very great journalist. So we wish you all the best as you leave these shores.
Thank you so much, Stéphane.
You can clap for me now. Go ahead, Michelle.
No claps just yet. Has Qatar reached out to the Secretary General? Are they seeking a meeting with him? Have they written any letters to him about the strikes this morning?
Okay, I'm not aware of any letters that have written. The Secretary General has been in touch this morning with the permanent representative of Qatar.
Via phone?
Via phone.
What was discussed?
The attack, but I have no other details to share with you.
Okay. And then just on Gaza, you mentioned that the UN estimates many people will remain in Gaza City. Do you have any idea of how many people?
I don't have those numbers. I mean, it's given the kinetic activities on the ground, it's hard for us to do these estimates. We can see people who are on the move. If we can get you some numbers, we will, though. Okay, Deji?
Yes, first, also on Gaza, will the UN staff still stay in Gaza City? Is that
As we've, I would refer you to what we've said in the past, is that we will continue as much as we can to stay and deliver humanitarian aid.
okay? On the attack in Doha, today, it's been reported that one of the target is actually the chief negotiator from Hamas. Does that mean that this negotiation of a peace deal has been terminated? The Israeli part.
Well, I mean, I think you have to ask that question to the parties in the negotiations.
And one last thing, I'm sorry. It's also been reported that before this operation, Israel told the White House about this operation, and obviously they did not stop Israel to do this, even though Israel said it's their it's their own operation. In this case, what's the response from the Secretary General to the United States?
We're not going to comment on press reports. Obviously, I think there'll be a briefing.
No, it's actually been confirmed by both Israeli and White House. It's not
we're
really a report.
We will wait for any official reaction. Abdelhamid.
Thank you. There was another attack on a sovereign state, which is Tunisia. A flotilla was attacked by a drone. Are you aware of that? And what do you say to that?
I'm aware of the reports. I think there were, from what I read this morning, there was contradictory information. The last I read, the Tunisian government said there had been no attack. So we have no clarity on what is going on.
My second question, Stéphane, if there is one terrorist in a building with 200 civilians, what does international law say? Can the attacker destroy the building to kill one terrorist?
Look, I'm not going to interpret international law from this podium. I think the Secretary General's statement this morning was very clear on how he felt about this attack. Madame Press of India.
Thank you. Thank you, Stéphane. On Nepal, the tensions, and we've seen how the escalating situation there. What is the SG's comment on that? Is he in touch with people, authorities there?
So I can tell you that we're obviously following the situation closely. He's very saddened by the loss of life. And again, the Secretary General is very clear in his urging for restraint to avoid any further escalation of violence. I mean, I think we've seen the pictures coming out of Nepal, which have been very dramatic. It's absolutely imperative that the authorities comply with international human rights law, and he underscores that protests must take place in a peaceful manner, that way that respects life and that respects property. Sir, you should have had the first question, given that you won.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You were asked this yesterday, but I'll follow up on it today regarding the statement from former Foreign Minister Barback about the PA's visa issue, the State Department. Can you describe what the UN's role is in trying to get this sorted out so that he can come here? And is there a plan B where he speaks remotely when it is his turn? Can you just expand on what
Sure.
the UN is doing?
On the issue of addressing the General Assembly remotely, my understanding is that it would require decision by the General Assembly membership. We've seen it, I think, in most recently in the case of the President of Ukraine, if I'm not mistaken. So that'll be up to the membership to decide. It is clearly for us important that the voice of the President of the Palestinian Authority be heard during a meeting on the two-state solution, he leading one of those two states. On the issue of visas, there is a treaty, the headquarters treaty agreement signed between the United Nations and the United States, which clearly lays out the host country's responsibilities in terms of facilitating the travel of diplomats, of journalists, of members of NGOs recognized by the UN to the United Nations when they have business in front of the UN, as people do during the general high-level segment. We are engaged with the U.S. authorities on this matter. But obviously, that does not preclude member states themselves from reaching out to the host country. And we have agreements with host countries for other headquarters duty stations along the same lines. Farnoosh.
Thanks, Steph. Given the Secretary General's comments this morning about the attack in Doha, he said all parties must work towards achieving a permanent ceasefire, not destroying it. Given that AP and others have reported that this attack happened while they were negotiating and going over the U.S. ceasefire deal, does the Secretary General see Israel as operating in good faith to end this war?
Look, we are not a party to the negotiations, so whether or not the negotiations are going on in good faith, I can't answer. But to the fact that I think when the Secretary General said parties should work towards a ceasefire and not destroying it, I think he was clearly referring to what went on today. Volodymyr, and then go to Pam.
Thank you, Stéphane. As you mentioned this morning, a Russian strike with a guided bomb hit a pension distribution point in Yarovo-Donetsk region, killing at least 24 civilians. Russia is intensifying its attacks on civilians. At the same time, Putin rejects any constructive ways to end the war, each time putting forward grotesque conditions. In this context, does the Secretary General have any message for Putin?
Look, the message remains the same. Let's move let's move seriously towards a ceasefire that would lead to an end to this conflict, and that would lead to a Ukraine that is safe within its international recognized border, in line with international law, in line with relevant UN resolutions, and something that will bring us a just and sustainable peace. Pamela Falk, and then Evelyn.
Thank you, Stéphane. Back to Qatar. My understanding is that there's at least a dozen UN agencies today there in Doha and around the country. Can you confirm that, and have you heard anything from them?
Yeah, they're all safe and sound, and as of a few hours ago, they were sheltering in place, or not moving, like I think, but everybody's safe and sound.
And on contacts you answered the question of contacts with Doha, but has the Secretary General reached out or had any contact with either the U.S. or Israel?
We've had contacts at the local level with the Israeli authorities, but that was focused on the situation in Gaza.
And not
It was
the-
focused on Gaza.
Thank you.
Evelyn? Yes, please.
Thank you, Steph. 2 of the 4 fellows for the Dag Hammarskjöld Fund for Journalists are here today, and I wanted you to recognize Asim from Pakistan and Letitia from Brazil, and she'll be able to address the SG in his mother tongue.
Good. Well, welcome both of you. Abdelhamid.
Do you think that the Secretary General will reach out to the Emir of Kuwait, Qatar, and express his solidarity?
I'm sure there will be. I'm sure there will be further contacts. Yes, sir. Welcome, please.
Thank you. I'm just curious, just to follow up to one of the previous questions. You said UN is not part of the negotiation team between regarding what's going on in Qatar. Does UN want to be part of the negotiation, or if you want, there's any parties object to that? What's your
Look,
take on
we're
this?
not. We never look to insert ourselves into an existing process. We are supporting it. The Secretary General is being kept briefed, and we are being helpful where we can be helpful. We're obviously involved in the overall situation, given our tremendous work, humanitarian work that we do in Gaza.
Should UN be part of the negotiation? Do you think it would be more helpful?
We want to always be as helpful as possible. In any good offices, what is important and what is vital and what is essential is that both parties, or all parties, in this case, both parties, want the good offices of the UN. We've seen different conflicts being resolved throughout the world using different mediation mechanisms. Some involve the UN directly, some don't. The important thing is to end the conflict. Okay, any questions online? Nope. Excellent.
Yes.
Oh, yes, please go ahead.
Hi, Steph. So the SG called for a ceasefire today, but so far Israel has attacked almost all of the neighboring countries, especially those who have hosted senior officials of Hamas who are involved in the ceasefire negotiations. So my question is, does this SG fear that Israel's continued escalation aims for a broader conflict? Thanks.
Look, we're not privy to people's ultimate goals. I think the Secretary General, again, was as clear as I've ever heard him today in terms of saying that people should work for a ceasefire and not against it. Any more questions from any other representatives of Anadolu? No? Okay. Are you sure? Yeah, we'll do an Anadolu-only briefing tomorrow. All right, goodbye. Thank you.